Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of EDUPATH, the journey of success. EDUPATH is a conversation with achievers that is brought to you by expert group of institutions, Alumni Association. We've been interviewing a lot of achievers over the past few weeks, and we've received a huge response from all of you. Now, before we begin this session, I would like to request all of you to kindly subscribe to our channel and click on the notification bell so that you receive regular updates regarding such programs that we conduct on a regular basis. Now, we all want to live a life that we love, a life that is uniquely our own and feels right to us. But making your own path in life isn't easy. Sometimes, when you try to create your own path in life, you might feel lost. You may not even really know what you want to do or what you want to create, just that you want something else. Now, today we have a guest who's going to share his story of creating his own path in life. And I would like to introduce, on behalf of our entire expert family, I would like to welcome Dr. Narasimha Bhat, who is the guest for today's session. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, and thank you, Ankush, for inviting me to this session and introducing me to your audience. Happy Diwali and a great year to
Happy
everybody.
Diwali to you
Pleasure
too,
to be
sir, and a
here.
very, very happy Diwali to all our viewers. We are extremely happy to have you here today. So before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to give a short, brief introduction of Dr. Narasimha Bhat. And Dr. Narasimha Bhat is the founder and CEO of Manipal.net Private Limited, called MDN for short. MDN is the first electronic hardware export unit in the Udupi and Dakshina Kannada districts. MDN is a one-stop shop, which means it has both software and hardware skills needed for a high-end, high-tech, world-class product. MDN specializes in machine learning, artificial intelligence, computer vision, image processing, video surveillance, and a lot more. The company has clients spread all over the world, including the US, UK, Japan. In addition to its objective to be at the forefront of technology, MDN strives to provide employment and career paths for the academically proficient talent, many with US education and work experience in the vicinity. In 2019, MDN received STPI's award for high growth in Tier 2 and 3 cities. The award was received by Mrs. Pramila Bhatt, the chairperson of MDN, who is Dr. Narasimha Bhatt's mother. That he could get to see his mother receive this high visibility award is what Dr. Bhatt considers as his crowning achievement. MDN has conceived, designed, and prototyped Freescale tower system, which was recognized as the world's #1 innovation by EDN at the Embedded Systems Conference, Silicon Valley, USA. They have also designed, conceived, and manufactured the world's first robust security device called Veiji Airlock, which has a patent pending, built specifically to address the European Union's GDPR policy. Dr. Bhatt is a member of the Board of Governors of Manipal University's Technology Business Incubator, the Curriculum Review Committee of NITK, the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Mangalore, and the Supreme Governing Council of the Academy of General Education, Manipal. Prior to Manipal.net, Dr. Bhatt was the director of R&D at Synopsys Incorporated USA, the world's #1 company in electronic chip design software. He was also the managing director of the Manipal R&D site of Synopsys, where he set up unique university collaborations with NITK Surathkal and Mahe Manipal. He was responsible for starting Zeta Infotech, the first software export unit in Udupi district. Before Synopsys, he was the technical lead at AT&T Bell Labs, the world's premier research institution located in Murray Hill, New Jersey, USA. Not just that, his academic qualifications go further than that. He was the best outgoing student at the English Primary School Manipal and the Manipal Junior College. He was awarded the gold medal for securing the first rank in his bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering at MIT Manipal, and the Senate commendation by the Indian Institute of Science Bangalore for securing the highest CGPA in his master's. His PhD thesis at the University of California, Berkeley, USA, titled Dharma, was awarded a US patent, the first patent in his PhD advisor's 30-plus year career. We are extremely privileged to have such a wonderful, such a highly qualified guest with us. Thank you once again, sir, for being on this series of EDUPATH.
Thank you, Ankush. My
Before we
pleasure to
continue,
be
in
here.
fact, I want to point out to our viewers, because most of our viewers are students who are in the 11th and 12th standards, who are aiming high. And I would like to point out to these students that the institution where Dr. Bhatt did his PhD, University of California, Berkeley, is one of the top institutes in the world. It is, I think, ranked third in the world, especially in your field, which is electronics. So I want to start with asking you, what was your experience like studying abroad? Because generally we see that a lot of students start going abroad for their education. I went abroad for my education, so of course I had some sort of an experience. But you went abroad a few, quite a few years ago. And what made you go abroad, and what was so different there?
Yes, the times are so very different. We are talking about the 80s, almost 30 plus years ago, when going abroad was in itself an event. Nowadays, people go abroad just for a vacation. Those days, going abroad was a big challenge. I was the first person from my family to go abroad. And besides getting admission, there were so many other side issues that took front stage. You know, was worried whether I would marry a white girl. For example, that was a big discussion point. Not whether Berkeley is number one or two or three. That never came up, I think. Then the other thing was, are you going to come back at all? Because there were stories of people who did these kinds of things, and natural concern was what is going to happen to me. In those days, for example, AIDS was a big thing. So there was so much misconception about AIDS, and people were worried that if you just go abroad, you might die due to AIDS or things like that. So those things dominated, and then trying to go to a place which is top ranked from starting from rural Karnataka was in itself a huge leap in terms of understanding the way people taught things. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. First, when I went to my classes at Berkeley, I never used to ask questions. And that went on for quite a while, because in India, it was considered that you're disturbing the lecturer or the teacher. So being quiet was considered a standard of good behavior. The more quiet you are, the more cooperative you are, is what is the concept in those days. So you learn to be quiet and not ask anything. And we also have our mythology or our ancestors telling us that silence is golden. The wise man never speaks, things like that. So it's all imbibed in you. You go to this different culture where not saying anything means that you're not understood anything. So you have to ask questions, you have to probe, and then you're considered, oh, this person is engaging, he's collaborating with the lecturer in this exchange of ideas. So all these things were challenging. Of course, as you mentioned, Berkeley was super top ranked, and especially in my field, it was the top 5 faculty were in the same building. And so top 5 faculty in the world were in the same building. And so you can imagine the amount of,
Right,
what it is, you have been in the US,
right.
but for your audience, it was I'm telling you, it was sort of threatening. It is, you feel that you are a complete nobody, you know nothing, but you have come there because they feel that you can succeed there. but you don't know that. So you go there, and it can get to you. So the first few days were, of course, very, very challenging. And I never prepared for meeting this top faculty. All the time I was preparing how to live on my own, how to cook, and learn all these other skills which I didn't have to go to the US. So you land up there and suddenly realize all the time you spend preparing for that is of no use. You have to perform. You have to understand in the lectures, and answer the assignments and do the exams and be an active role as a student.
Right. No, in
So
fact, I have visited the UC Berkeley campus a couple of years ago, and it's really beautiful on top of a hill, and it's quite green as well. So I can definitely attest to our students that maybe they should also aim high and aim to go to such universities and really get that experience of not just sitting quiet in class, but also developing the ability to ask questions, because that becomes really, really important. Now, a follow-up question to what we have been talking about. So you studied and later worked in the US for quite some time, but most people do not come back to India. So what made you return to India?
okay, so maybe that's a question you can ask yourself too, Ankush, but because you are one of those rare people who have come back, and I appreciate you for that. So the goal with which I went to the United States was to learn stuff that I realized would be difficult for me to learn easily in India. So when I went to the Indian Institute of Science, which is the number one research institute in my field, I thought that I had, reached the place where I could acquire everything. And my master's project was actually to do an accelerator to do some kind of chip design related work. And as a consequence of that, we designed a small integrated circuit, which was one of the first ones in India itself. And it was a big project. My advisor and the lab and everybody made multiple copies of my master's thesis and distributed it all over, saying that we have done this great thing. So I had sort of reached the limit of what I could acquire sitting in India. I'm not saying that there were not others who were able to proceed with that, but I was one day, it was raining very hard in Bangalore, and I was standing outside in the shelter. And one of my faculty members was also standing there, and he asked me, "Are you not applying abroad?" And that popped into my head the possibility that I could do it. And he said, "You should not just apply to any university; just apply to the top. Don't think that you are not capable." And that is sort of the thing that made me want to apply to Berkeley and Stanford, and I got admission into both. And for some reason, I chose Berkeley. But if that rain had not happened, and if I was not standing there, and he had not suggested that casual things, just now as what you mentioned to the audience, always aim for the highest. You don't put a limit on yourself. And I said, okay. So I was going to Berkeley just to acquire skills which I felt would be very difficult to find in India. So the goal of staying there was never a part of my plan. Yes. So now when I went there, what happened is by Micro, which is a big California grant. And I somehow felt obligated that these companies have come together, put together this grant to educate me. So I have to give back. I can't just walk away and say, okay, I took this free stuff and now I'm goodbye, I'm going back to India. So I said I should contribute. Why are they funding me? In the hope that I will be a part of some company there. So I said, okay, I have to give back. So I stayed there for some time. And then after that, I came back. So the question is not why you came back. The question is why did you stay there for so many years after you went there just to learn and come back?
Right.
So the answer to that is it was never in the never.
Right.
So coming back was always the plan.
Yeah. So I think that's a different perspective, because generally we hear stories about people going there and they have a lot of reasons for not coming back. But I think here you had a reason for staying for some time rather than a reason for not coming back. So that's really, really wonderful. Now we have received a question from a student who asks how to be energetic and patient through your academic life. So, how to avoid boringness and how to be concentrated in your academics.
Tough question, because I don't think I can empathize with the question. See, let me put it this way. The boring thing, related to that, uh, when I went to the Indian Institute of Science, for the first time in my life, I began to doze off in the class. Till then, I had never ever dozed off in the class. So it was such a serious issue for me that I went to see a doctor. So why is it that I am dozing off in the class? Uh, Most people doze off in the class, so they would never go to see a doctor. But in my case, it was when I reached this fantastic place where the staff was, the faculty was simply superb. My peer group was the best. The boring part happens probably because you are not fully engaged. In my case, I was dozing off because I was not sleeping well enough. So, in going from Manipal, which was a humid climate, to Bangalore, which was a sort of dry climate and a cooler climate, was turning off the ceiling fan. In Manipal, we are always turning on the ceiling fan, and the ceiling fan hiss or sound gave a sort of uniform sound space which kept me asleep at night. In Bangalore, turned off the fan, so there were these noises in the night which would sort of not allow me to go into what we call as REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. So when I went to the class, I was always not completely having my sleep, and I would doze off in the class. But to realize this took quite a while. But that was the thing. So now sometimes boring happens for the same reason, that you are not able to fully concentrate. Probably you are not able to fully concentrate because you are not slept well enough. You're not given your brain enough sleep. So body may not require as much sleep as the brain does. So unless the brain is fully rested and during its sleep, it reorganizes all the data that it has collected throughout the day and puts it into different bins or whatever it does. If it is not done that enough, then the next morning, your attention span or your ability to get more information or ability to think and analyze reduces, as a result of which you lose attention, as a result of which you start getting bored because your brain starts flittering all over the place. So that is one of the reasons. The other one is, to get the brain to be stable and attentive itself requires some training, right? So uh, very good teachers know that maximum 20 minutes is when you can capture the audience. So nowadays maybe it has become 10 because you're not used to being what can I say, focused for a long duration. So some techniques that you can probably use to get your brain to remain focused on a particular topic or point of discussion will help you not get bored. So what I'm trying to say is, you probably didn't expect this. You thought that maybe I'll say that the subject should be interesting or something like that. No, I don't think it has anything to do with the topic itself. You can get yourself completely engaged in anything, because the brain is by definition agnostic. It doesn't have a preference of this or that. So if you engage yourself fully, you will never get bored. And to engage yourself fully, you need to be attentive. To be attentive, you need to have your brain to be focused. So it all boils down to the fundamental thing, that you need to develop some brain exercises maybe. For example, some people use music as an exercise to get the brain to function. Some people use breathing exercises. So there are different exercises which will allow the brain. Sleep, of course, you cannot do away with. I can assure you that sleep looks such an innocent contributor, but it is the main contributor. So especially our younger generation do not sleep enough.
Right.
And you cannot actually recover your sleep debt, is what people are finding out these days. You cannot say that, okay, today I will sleep for 4 years, tomorrow 4 hours, and tomorrow instead I will sleep for 12 hours. That doesn't work like that. So you have to give your brain sleep. I'm not talking about your body. Body can rest by just lying down or sitting quietly or something like that. But the brain has to sleep and reorganize. If you do that, if you ensure that, I think the word bore will never come in your life.
Right. That's wonderful. And I think a natural question that now many students will have is, how long were you sleeping during your student life?
So, so this is a very very interesting question, because this is a very a point of big contention. It's a very controversial question. So I don't want you to apply it to yourself unless you're sure. But I can tell you what my golden rule was: you should sleep at or before 9:30, and I did that, and it was a challenge for me, because as you do more and more studies and more topics come up. So the big question I was asking myself was, will I be able to adhere to this even while writing my PhD thesis or not? Will I be able to sleep by 9:30 every night or not? And luckily I was able to. And then I said that, suppose I am not able to, then I can still resort to a stimulant like coffee or tea, which I've never had before. Because somebody has coffee or tea all the time, then another day they cannot use it as a stimulant anymore. It becomes a way of life. So that was my fallback plan. Suppose I run out of time, then I'm going to drink coffee or tea in the last few days of my PhD, because if I run out. But luckily it never happened. So I always used to sleep 8 hours minimum. 9:30 to 5:30 was my sort of routine, and it has stayed that way. But again, I'm not saying that that is a mantra or that's how you should do. For some time I used to tell people, you should always get up at 5:30. That there is no way you can succeed in life unless you get up at 5:30. And if you look at many successful people, they also say the same thing. But I have now realized that it need not be so, because whether you're a day person, night person, how many hours you sleep, all of that could be individualistic, but you will know whether you have slept enough or not, and if you are able to get up naturally in the morning without the help of an alarm clock. If you can do that regularly, then you know that you have slept enough. Otherwise, it means that your brain requires more sleep, or and you have to please it.
Right.
You have to do
Right.
that
Right.
somehow.
So I think it's more about setting up a good habit and a sleep routine and a discipline that helps you actually train your brain to actually go to sleep at a certain time and then wake up at a certain time. This is a really nice perspective that we're getting. Now, coming to from your academics, you came back to you worked in the US, you came back to India, and after some time you had the idea of setting up your own company. How did this idea come about? Because generally, whenever we already have a steady job, and then if you want to quit that and start your own thing, people consider it to be very risky. So, how did that transition happen for you?
Very interesting point, because this is a question I also ask many of the people who come for interviews to my company. The question I basically ask is this: suppose you had infinite money, right? Infinite money, which means you can do anything you want and still you will have enough money. What would you be doing? What would you be doing? Because now you don't have to spend your time to do earn money. You don't have to spend your time to work or anything. You can just be. So suppose you are going to be just be, what are you going to do? And this is a question I asked myself. So one morning I was just walking and I asked myself this question: suppose I had infinite money. Of course, it's a completely hypothetical question. You can never have infinite money. Even if you had infinite money, you'll want to have more money. So, but suppose money is out of the equation. Let's put it that way. Suppose money is out of the equation. What would you be doing? And I was startled by the answer that I got. I said, I would probably be sitting with some electronic circuits and assembling something with a soldering iron, or getting some LED lights to blink. And it was a stunning revelation to me, because I realized, but that is not what I'm doing, right? So that is not what I'm doing. What is I want to do if I had the complete freedom to do what I want to do? So how did I get into this situation? By for doing something which is not what I would have completely wanted to do. So the answer is, okay, I wanted to come back. So come back and do what? So my original intention of going into the industry was, I said, okay, I'll go into the industry, I'll understand how an engineer's contribution happens. Because by nature, or what can I say? What comes easy to me is that I like to teach. I like to pass on some ideas to somebody else, and I thought I will get into academics. That was my goal. And part of the reason I said, okay, I will do a PhD, because PhD was a minimum qualification to become a professor or a teacher. So I said, okay, so I'm qualified now, I can teach. But before I teach, I want to know what is the output of that teaching. What are those engineers that I'm going to teach? What are they going to do? So let me go into the industry, figure that all out, and then I will become a better teacher. So that was the goal. I said, okay, then as I went into the industry, and I realized that I had not learned enough to teach. I have to spend some more time in the industry. I said, I have to come back to India. So there were these conflicting requirements, which said that, okay, I have to spend some more time in the US if I want to learn how to become a better teacher. But I had already decided to come back to India after I had gained my PhD. So come back, and coming back to India, India is a big country, right? I just don't say you come back to India. And then I said, where am I going to be in India? Naturally, I had left India from Indian Institute of Science. So my first preference was to come back to Bangalore. So I came back to Bangalore. But even before that, I said, India doesn't have an industry that can support my level of experience and education. So I thought first maybe I will go to Singapore. Okay, so because Singapore is close enough to
Right.
India, right? I can come there with one flight. So I went to Singapore. My classmate from Indian Institute of Science was already working there, so I went and spent a day with him there, trying to understand the lifestyle and things at Singapore. Then I also went to Europe, another place. Europe is closer to India than the US, right? So rather than come back to India in one hop, okay, I will do it in hops. Okay, first I will come closer, and then I will come closer, and so on. So I did all these things, and then I came to Bangalore. I went to Indian Institute of Science. Those were the days that Bangalore was just destroying itself, you know. So it was getting from this beautiful place that it was when I did my masters to becoming this polluted, congested, all these kinds of things. And I went around Bangalore, and then I went inside Indian Institute of Science. Inside the campus, it was just the same as it was when I did my master. So this was like 6 or 7 years later. But I came out, it was completely different Bangalore. I remember that day because I wept. I literally wept walking through the campus of Indian Science, saying that no, I don't think I can be useful or productive or successful in such an environment, and I can't closet myself inside a campus. So I have to lead life. So I said Bangalore is also out of the question. So then I said, okay, then one hop directly, come home, right? Come back to Manipal, which was the ultimate goal, of course, but I thought I will do it in hops. I said, okay, so no, short circuit, come directly to Manipal. Come to Manipal and do what? There is no industry here. For that matter, there was no industry in Bangalore either. So what had happened is I had overqualified myself to be useful to the industry that existed here, and the industry that I could contribute to wasn't here. So it created sort of a no-win situation, and that left me puzzled. I think it was almost a year or 2 years where I was practically doing nothing, uh, just trying to understand what it is that I should be doing. And then it struck me, maybe there are other people like this. Maybe there are other people who also would like to come back. So we had created an education system where we were training people to be engineers, but there was no next step. There was no industry which could absorb those engineers. Even I'm not saying you should have a master's or a PhD, even a bachelor's. You take a bachelor's of computer science or a bachelor's of electronics or anything. Yeah, a bachelor of civil engineering, maybe you could contribute by building houses and all that. But again, there also, the engineering qualification, a BE degree, makes you quite powerful. You can do a lot of things. You can build a dam and a bridge and things like that, but you're only building houses. Just to build a house, you don't need to have a bachelor's of civil engineering BE degree. Same thing with electronics and computers. You don't need that level of expertise, because the kind of work, suppose you're doing a web page design, you can just do web page design by learning yourself one Coursera course. You don't even have to go to school. But the amount of depth of knowledge and the breadth of knowledge that an engineering degree gives you makes you very, very powerful. And if you're not fully contributing that, naturally you will get frustrated or disappointed, or so many things can happen. So I said, maybe there are people like this who are overqualified, who feel that simple case. Even if you study in Mangalore or Manipal, you have to go to Bangalore, right? There is no industry here. So I said, somebody has to do something about this. Why not that somebody be me? Why not I start with myself as an example? Just like in your case, your parents started with you as a test case to do expert. So I said, I will do myself as an example and become the first person who will do things that are not available naturally in this surrounding, hoping that others like that will find it easier tomorrow. So one person has to sacrifice. Somebody has to sacrifice. So let that person be me. So instead of doing soldering and electronic boards and stuff like that, I will do administration, finance, setting up the company, legal, everything, so that others can do their soldering and software writing or whatever, so that they can all be happy by one person being the pioneer. So that was the sort of thing, and that is why I'm happy today that there are so many people who have returned from the US, who probably won't even want to go to the US because they can say, okay, we'll work at manipal.net and satisfy our urge or satisfy our desire to contribute to high-end kind
That
of
is
engineering.
a very, very inspiring
So
story, because at the end it's important to do what you love, and love what you do. So there's one more question that's come from a student. The student's name is Sohan, who's a student of Expert PU College. He asks, "Sir, have you ever failed in your work or in your business, and how did you solve this problem of failure at any stage?"
all the time, all the time. Failure is a way of life. I think how you deal with failure defines what you are able to finally achieve. So if you balk at failure, then probably you don't attempt many things. I think by definition, failure defines an entrepreneur. The one who wants is willing to take risk, which means one who is willing to fail. So what happens is we somehow equate failure with failing a subject, because that's the only experience we have. For us as a student, the failure we see is we write a test, we fail. That is not acceptable. Nobody treats you well after that, and it's very difficult to come out of that. I'm not talking about that failure. That is a construed failure. Somebody knew the answer to that, and you didn't know the answer. That's why you're considered failure. Failure is when nobody knows the answer and you also don't know the answer, right? You try to do something which nobody has done before, you fail. But that doesn't mean that somebody else could have done it and passed. There's no pass in such. It is you're trying to do something which hasn't been done before, which you have definitely not done before, which nobody has taught you to do before. So a pioneer is that who wants to do something which nobody else. So we call the tread the untrodden path, right? So if you are willing to fail, then you're willing to learn. Why does a child, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, pick up a language just like that, whereas an adult takes ages? Because the child is willing to fail. It doesn't know, it doesn't care that it spells a word wrong or says a word wrong. Next time it will say it right. But humans are afraid, right? Oh, if I say something wrong, it's an embarrassment, and I don't want to say it, so I'll just keep my mouth shut or something like that. No. So if you are willing to fail, then you're willing to learn, and then you're willing to move ahead. So failure at all things that I've tried. And from failure, you learn. And from learning, you probably find another way. I'm not saying you'll pass in that same thing. You try this. So the first thing I tried, for example, was to do some kind of coaching for people to enter the industry. Okay. And then I realized I was not doing a good job at that. Then I did something else. Then I did something else. So finally, what happens is you only see the success part, right? I will have tried 15 different paths, and that's the true of any successful person. You look at Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, and you say, "Oh wow, I want to become like them," but you don't know what number of failures that they have passed, and you only see the final destination, and then you decide that you think that that is very, very attractive. But failure is a way of life, and the simple solution to that is don't be afraid of failure. take failure as a way of life and remind yourself that as a child, to just walk a few steps, you have fallen down at least
Right.
a million times, but you kept trying, right? You have done it. So it's not that I'm asking you to do something which somebody else has done. You yourself have learned how to walk, and by that is by falling down. So
Right. And
same thing
talking
here.
about failure, we see a lot of startups these days, especially in India, hundreds and thousands of startups every year. And it mostly comes out of students, especially engineering students, having brilliant ideas. And as soon as they get a degree, they're out there trying to, set up their new company and make a business out of it. But a lot of studies, especially a recent study by IBM, found that 90% of startups fail within the first 5 years. Now, why is this so? What differentiates a successful startup from an unsuccessful one?
So before I can answer that directly, I have to find out what you mean by success, right? Many people do startups for different reasons. I sit on the board of governors of the Manipal University Technology Business Incubator, whose job is to, direct and coach and make students become successful startups. So they have funds, and we look at engineering students, and we feel that they can become successful. Success for a startup, for let us look at the definition of a startup. What is a startup? A startup is, there is a company that has somebody, let's say one person or two persons have gotten together, and they say they have this brilliant idea. uh, for to make this a concrete example, let's take the idea that you want to make an app. You want to make an app. This app will help blind people talk, or see, or something like that. For example, I'm just saying that visually, physically challenged people do something that they were not able to do before. Let's say that is the thing. So you think that this is going to be very useful, and you put your energies into making that happen. But it is not just that you come up with an app, right? You have to do so many other things. You have to be able to pay yourself, right? What happens is, as a student, somebody is paying for you. Your parents are paying for your fees, your food, your shelter, everything. You're not worrying about any money aspects at all. It just happens. Especially in India, I'm talking about. In the US, while studying, you're learning. While learning, you're studying. So it is a different ball game altogether. Here, it is while studying, you're only studying, and then from that you draw the conclusion that while working you don't have to study anymore. So while working you're only working. So that doesn't work like that. So same thing here. So there are finances to handle. More than that, there are other people's dreams and ambitions that you are trying to bring in and make part of. So they might get disappointed. So many other complicated issues which have nothing to do with the app and which have nothing to do with physically challenged people will dominate the scene. And you have no training for that. You have no experience for that. You have not even given it thought. So when those things enter the picture, then you either give up, or you get somebody else to solve the problem. So that is, then your goals are probably not met. I met many of these startup people who come to us for advice or coaching or something like that. And first thing I ask them is, what is your salary? I said, I'm not paying myself any salary, right? Uh, uh, then how do you plan to survive? Well, right now my father is paying for my food and this thing. I'm staying in my father's house or something like that. Okay, so right there you have defined that your startup, you're not ever factored in into the equation that you need to pay yourself. Forget paying your employees. You have to pay yourself. So you have not even made it sustainable. So these things are the ones that probably make a startup not take off. And then there is what I come back to the question of what is success. You say that I want to become a public limited company. I want to become like Infosys. Some such goal you have, uh, because those are the ones that make mainstream media stories, right? So you are probably attracted to that for a different reason altogether, and the app and the physically challenged people were just an excuse to reach your other bigger goal of become publicly listed or becoming a multimillionaire. I see many people who say that they want to have their startups, valuated at crores of rupees, and then you not having enough money to sustain yourself, you go to some venture capitalist whose only aim is to put some money in you so that their money multiplies. So now you have now brought into the equation somebody else whose goals have nothing to do with your goals, right? And now you start working for that person's goals or that institution's goals. So all these confusing things come in, and the original engineering idea of making an app to serve the visually handicapped or the physically challenged people is lost. And you wake up one morning and you say, hey, I'm not working on the app at all. It's like me. I'm saying that I'm not doing the soldering kind of thing at all. Of course, I thought of that earlier, so I know. But you wake up one morning and say, okay, forget it. I'll just join this company which is doing that app, and I will become an engineer there. So that's what happened. That is the event circle that you go through, and that's why many of these things fail, because you have not thought it through. So now you go to an MBA trained or somebody, they'll say first you should have a business plan, then you should have this, then you should do this. So that is probably one way to make it happen, where you streamline the process. But then you look at very successful companies, they never had a business plan, right? You can ask your parents, did they have a business plan when they started Expert? No, they had probably a noble intention that they want to supplement people's learning, which was not happening in school. And they just went with that, and they forgot about everything else. And now you look back, you look at your big Expert campus, and you say that, wow, I want to start a educational campus like Expert. And then you and where to get money to put up building. You're not thinking about the original intention of the promoters or the ones who did it, right? Same thing in Manipal. You look at the original founder of Manipal, they never had a business plan, right? You look at Manipal, they wanted to say, we want to bring education to the doorstep of the people here. They have to go somewhere else. And that was what kept driving them. So, and that is what they worked for. So if you have that original motivation, which is pure, which is clean, and you strive for that, then startups will succeed. That is what I feel. I'm not a business expert or a somebody who can say for sure that that is the only way to do it. But I know that that method works.
Right.
Other methods might work, but that method will make it successful in terms of reaching that goal.
Right.
Not successful in terms of being listed in NASDAQ or something like that. That goal I don't know how to reach, because that I don't think should be a goal at all. So there are people who have this exit strategies, like, so I will do this startup, then I will sell it to somebody, then I will start another startup, then I will sell it to somebody, and that's what they keep doing. So they are agnostic in terms of what the startup does. So they just know how to make a startup, sell it to somebody, and tomorrow that might collapse. That doesn't matter. But this one, I've started something else and I've sold it to somebody else. So I have become successful. We call them surf riders. You ride on the surf. So, but I want to be the wave creator, not the surf rider.
Beautiful.
So those people who want to do the waves themselves, I'm sure they will succeed.
I think there's a question that a student has asked that is quite relevant here. The student called Shashank Patil asks, how to be consistent in our work? Because when we start something good, we start it in a nice way, but then you slowly start losing consistency. So how to be consistent in anything you do?
Okay, so this comes back to the remark that you made when I talked about sleep, is that you need to have a routine, right? Whether we like it or not, the human body loves routines. I don't mean routine across the year. At least within a season, you should have a routine. So within the rainy season, you can have one routine. In winter, you can have another routine. In summer, you can have another routine. Just like the earth is seasonal, so human body also might be seasonal, and it might be sensitive to all these things. But you should have a routine, so which makes you efficient and consistent and stable. So otherwise, what happens is, it comes back to this. When you say you want to be consistent, you mean your brain is going flitting all over the place, like it's like a butterfly. It starts behaving like a butterfly, and there are tons of people who have worked on this, be it at the spiritual level, at the psychological level, or different kinds of exercises that keep you focused. But consistency is one, you should be sure of your goal. What is it that you're trying to reach? For example, I want to say, I want to understand let us say, differentiation. I want to understand differentiation. So I will not move to the next page till I have understood this paragraph, which is defining differentiation. I will not move to the next page, or I will not move to the next line till I have understood the first line. So if you do that, if your goal is I want to understand this, rather than say that I want to complete this page today. So I don't know how many pages I will complete today, but I want to understand this topic. If that is your goal, then you will not lose that consistency. You will not get bored. All those things are sort of related, I feel. I hope I have answered Mr.
Right.
Patil's
Yes,
question
yes, yes,
in that end.
definitely. Another student called Saujanya asks, I think this comes from a lot of people talking about hard work and smart work. So Saujanya asks, what is the difference between hard work and smart work? Which is better? But a more important follow-up question she asks is the ratio of hard work and smart work the same in academics and in business?
Okay. So this brings to me, reminds me of how I tease some of my engineers. I say, you are all hard-working Indians. So we feel that if we are fully engaged in doing something, we are working hard. So which is true. Again, what do you mean by hard work? Does it bring to your mind somebody who is digging through the laterite with a pickaxe and sweating all over and totally tired by the end of the day? Is that hard work? Yes, it is hard work. That is definitely the picture that should come to your mind, or that must have been the picture that whoever defined this word hard before the word work put up. But today, hard work need not mean that, right? Hard work might mean how much of your brain is fully engaged in doing something. Now, the question is, your brain is a very, very powerful tool. So you can make it do completely grunt work, right? For example, I can say I want to add the numbers 1 to 100, and I can go on adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Your brain is fully engaged, right? It is fully doing addition. It is not making a single mistake. At the end, you come up with the answer. But you can also say that there is a pattern here. I can come up with a formula. I can put an equation, and I can say 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 100 is boom. You can say 100 into 101 by 2, right? So how do I? That is smart work, right? Now I have used my brain to come up with this equation, and maybe I spend more time to do that equation versus adding 1 to 100. So I might have spent more time. So you might say that I've done more hard work to do that smart work. If you use time as a metric of how hard something is. But that's only once. After that, you ask anybody 1 to 1,000, 1 to 10,000, you have the answer, right? In 1 second. So are you using your time in a way so that the next time that thing comes around, you are being more efficient? Then it is smart. If you've not done that, next time you want to do 1 to 201, again you will start adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus. So you are working hard. Definitely, you are not doing any console. You are not playing games or doing anything. You are adding. But have you done it in the best possible utilization of your brain? No. So hard work versus smart work is that always assume that whenever you're doing something, this will come back again. You can reuse your energies that you're spending on doing this now next time in a more efficient way. So if you can automate that, if you can write a tiny little script, then next time it's going to be better. And more than that, it's going to be error free, right? So now you get a tool to do something which your brain doesn't have to do, which means your brain can do another something. So that is how, if you say that your brain is a very precious commodity and you have only one of it, right? Each person is, as far as I know, has been given only one brain. So how best I can use it to my advantage as well as to the advantage of all those around me, then you're doing smart. Otherwise, you're just doing plain simple hard.
That's wonderful. Hard work basically forms the foundation for more efficient, more precise smart work. Now, changing gears a bit, whenever we interact with students, we have this, or many students have this impression that education is not important to becoming successful. Especially students give examples like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and say that they were college dropouts, yet they became successful in life. How justified is such a claim? Um, is education not at all relevant to success? And what role has education had in your life?
Okay, so there are related issues to this also. You know, some people say that Saraswati and Lakshmi both don't reside in the same place, saying that Saraswati has to do with education and Lakshmi has to do with success and glamour. You know, these are all connected issues. Uh, Now, let me take one aspect of that. First, you said Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all that. See, again, we look at one particular facet of their life. We don't know Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. We have never met them, right? We listen to some story somewhere which says they dropped out of college and now they are successful. Now we tie these two things together. Bill Gates nor Steve Jobs has said that because I dropped out, I became successful. Nobody
Right.
said that, right? We have drawn that conclusion because it's convenient for us because we want to drop out. So now we need to come up with some reason why it is, we want to rationalize our decision maybe. So the question I want to say is there are different uh, facets or phases to those people. So if we have all those other facets of theirs, but we have this one thing missing, that is we have not dropped out, and that is why we are not successful, then I can say in all means go and drop out, right? You have all the other things, you didn't have this one thing, you are having this college, you're about to get a degree, and that will make sure that you will not become a Bill Gates because all other aspects of Bill Gates you have, except that you are not dropped out. Then certainly you drop out, you will become a replica of Bill Gates, let us say. But that is not true, right? Bill Gates, if you look at his story, had to struggle and do so many other things to become successful. And there was chance, and you can study the life of Warren Buffett for that matter. At some age of 12 or 13, he was selling newspapers or was a newspaper boy and then moved on and on and on. So it's an entrepreneurship throughout. There is not that suddenly you do something. Okay. So now education, you say, by education, I think what you are meaning is formal education, right? Going to school kind of education. You can't say that you will become something without learning anything. That is not possible. You have to learn all the time. Whether you're gone to school or not, whether you have a degree or not, you have to learn all the time. There are people, if you take a generation before us, who never even have a bachelor's degree because there was no schooling. There was no bachelor's degree possible. They are all very successful. That we can't apply that to ourselves and say that from now on I will do that same thing. So we have to go with what is the current, what can I say, accepted practices. So some people call that
Yeah.
dharma, right? Some people say doing the right thing means what? Doing the thing that is at present accepted. So at present, society is valuing people who have gone through a formal education. You take example of I always look, every time I travel on bus, I look at the bus driver. I say, this person gets up at maybe 5 o'clock or 5:30. He starts his bus trip at 6 o'clock. He has to go all the way till 10 p.m. when the bus thing stops. He's continuously driving. All the time he has to concentrate. All the time he has to concentrate, right? He makes a mistake, minimum 50 people are dead.
Right.
Minimum 50 people are dead, right? Whereas you take a surgeon, if he loses his concentration for a minute, one person will die on the operating table, right? But who is
Right.
more valued? Who is
The
more valued,
surgeon. The surgeon.
right?
Right.
So now you cannot say that I will change society's economic system and I will say I will make sure that the bus driver is paid more and things like that. No. So this is the accepted practice now. So you are now just a small puny thing that is entering into the system. You can now work with the system or my own system. Either is fine. But if you have the capability to define, redefine, and do your own thing, by all means do that. But if you are not wanting to do that, then I think education, a qualification, formal education process is a quick way to success.
Right.
Is a quick way to be leading a comfortable life. Again, by success, I mean that you can lead a comfortable life. You can provide for food, shelter, and clothing for yourself, your children, and your extended family. And education is the quickest way to do that.
Right.
I know, being in a place like Manipal, I look at people whose previous generation were probably gardeners and bus drivers and all that, and their children, they go and get a formal bachelor's, MBA or something like that, and next thing you know, this gardener is in Switzerland visiting his daughter's company and having a vacation, which would never have been possible in one generation. Education gives you that luxury and that power.
Right.
So you can't just throw that away and say that education is not required. Definitely, you can look at Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and say that, yeah, they did it without that. But now there is a very subtle point there. In spite of, or because of. So is it because they dropped out they became successful, or
In
in
spite of.
spite of dropping out they became successful? Suppose they had educated and completed it, maybe they would have become
Even more
even more successful.
successful.
We'll never know
Right.
that.
Right. No, it's a very interesting thing because I think the major difference is a lot of students misrepresent these stories to mean that they failed their education rather than them actually voluntarily dropping out because maybe their plans did not match with the formal education that they were getting. But as you said, it's probably a very multifaceted issue, and we have to look at the whole picture to get a better idea of whether it was because of dropping out or in spite of dropping out that they became so successful. Now, what I think, because we are running quite short on time, we will try to take some quick rapid fire answers to a few questions because there are a lot of questions coming in from students, and there was a lot of demand to have an entrepreneur, somebody who's been successful like you on this show. So we will try to take a few questions very quickly. A student, Namita, asks, does having skill in a job more important than the subjective knowledge?
What do you mean by subjective knowledge? You mean just having a,
Knowledge of the
oh,
subject, knowledge of the subject versus actual skills, practical skills.
so by definition itself, a person who is skilled in a particular task or a job or a tool is called a technician, right? A person who has an overview of the thing is called an engineer, right? So we should make sure that our engineers don't become technicians.
Correct. Right, great. I think it's balancing. Having a knowledge in addition to skills is probably the best way to go ahead. Yes. There's another student, Vishali, who asks, what should be the intention of starting any successful work, whether to earn name and fame or to win hearts or for our satisfaction?
I think primarily you should do something which brings you satisfaction, because otherwise you will not be able to take it forward. As a result of your being satisfied, if you can make people around you happy, that is a bonus. But if you are just saying I want to do this for name or fame, you have started on the wrong path itself. You can never use that as a goal. It can come as a side effect, but if you use that as a goal, you have failed at the first step itself.
Right. So there's another student who asks how to regain hopes after attaining failure. So we have already spoken about failure, but how does one regain hopes after attaining failure?
Right. So this is a thing that happens very often, and it's a very deep question. So what happens is when you fail, you tend to look at yourself just immediately before the failure and at the failure itself. But you need to look beyond. You have to look behind. Maybe you have to look behind 1 year or 2 years, and you can probably do a list. And this helps a lot. You can make a list of all your pluses and all your minuses, and you make that list, because when you first start writing down, you'll only think of all the minuses, because the failure is dominating your brain, your mind, your heart, everything. You will just keep on writing all your negatives. Then after some time your positives will start coming. You write all the positives, throw away the negatives, just look at the positives. Just look at the positives and say, wow, I have all these positive things in me. Because ultimately you must realize that you are a creation of the Almighty. And if you have failed, it means the Almighty has failed, right? Almighty has created a bad creation. Is that possible? Impossible, right? So you are not destined to fail. So failure is a temporary thing. You are a creation of the Almighty, just like everybody else. So you are designed to be successful.
Wow, that's a wonderful answer. Um, a few more quick questions. So now, whenever we try to do something new, there are always people who will try to discourage us from going ahead. Don't do that. It's not going to work out for you. Maybe you're not suited for that kind of a thing. But was this something that you experienced while starting your business? And what did you do when faced with such people?
All the time. So, all the time. So, one thing you have to realize, the people who are dissuading you from doing something are your well wishers. You must remember that. They are not trying to dissuade you from doing want you to succeed. But you have to always realize that whenever you listen to somebody, if you follow their advice, you will become like them. Because they have done, they are where they are because they have followed their own advice. So now you ask yourself, do I want to become like that person? If so, follow their advice by all means. If not, remind yourself, if I get dissuaded by them, then I will become like them. So if that is acceptable, go ahead. If that is not acceptable, then what you're trying to do is what something that person has not attempted. Naturally, so what they're telling you is based on their own beliefs. But your beliefs are different and based on your belief, because you sleep with yourself every night. They don't come and be with you. So ultimately, you have to make yourself at peace and at ease. So follow your instincts if you believe in them.
Wonderful. Another question. Now, I was going through, your company's website, and I was seeing that you and your family, everybody is very actively involved in this, and especially you and your brothers. All of you are very highly educated, extremely qualified people. Where did this desire to achieve, this common desire in the family to achieve come from? And was there some common factor that motivated all of you?
Yes, of course. All three of us came from the same parents, so that is the common common thing. So maybe you should interview my mother, who many at her skills. Uh, it is what can I say? When I've become a parent myself, I have tried to examine my parenting skills against my own parents' parenting skills, and I realized that I fall pretty short. They had this very powerful ability to accept, never expect. I don't remember a single day my parents looked at my marks card critically. Uh, of course, you may say that because I am an outstanding student, they didn't have to do that. But because they didn't do that, I became an outstanding student. The cause and effect are very different. Because as you don't do well many times. You probably don't do your homework someday. Something happens, but they never examined me or pressured me or put expectations saying that, look, you're supposed to get a rank this year or something like that. So I remember once the headmaster came to our house saying that your son is going to get a rank or something like that. So my parents were least interested in that. They said, well, if you feel that he should get a rank, maybe you should train him. I mean, there's nothing from our side that I think we should be doing anything different. So it set that very calming sort of atmosphere at home. They said that there is no expectation. So when there is no expectation, you are the only one who is setting expectations or things, and that makes you do at best at what you can, rather than meet somebody else's goals or desires or ambitions. So I think that is the common thing, which is a formula which is, as probably you are saying, has worked. And I have to believe you.
No, no,
So, but
definitely.
yes.
It's very rare to see everybody in the family, because I feel that your parents have probably done the best thing by giving everybody good education, good parenting, and that is something that all parents, because even our parents are watching this show, our students' parents, so maybe they can also learn from this that it's more about encouraging your children and accepting, and also only encouraging them to do their best rather than expecting them to do something that probably they get pressurized into doing.
Yeah, I think parents, one thing I want to just
Yes, yes,
sneak in
please do.
is that
Yes.
parents, probably many I have met who have their own ambitions which have not been realized. And they try to realize their desires and ambitions through their children, which I think is not the right thing to do, because the child has its own life, right? So it has its own things to do. So if you have not met your ambitions, too bad. Let the next generation meet their
Right,
expectations and
right.
ambitions.
Was there ever a moment of uncertainty in your life where you are unsure if whether you have made the right decision or not? You don't know how it's going to, or what the consequences of your decision are going to be. And what do you do when faced with such uncertainty?
All the time, all the time, because if you look at the kinds of things that we have attempted, there is no precedent, right? You want to come back to Manipal and you want to start, you just don't want to start some company, you want to do some high tech company which is going to do products which are useful to the Silicon Valley or something like that. So whom do you ask? Nobody. You want to put up a building, and you want to say you want to get a building permit without bribing. Whom do you ask? Everybody will say it can't be done. So you attempt to build this building, you invested your money or whatever it is, you don't know whether you're going to get a permit, right? Very big uncertainty. And everybody will tell you something. They say, no, it's not possible. It's a very standard thing here. Adu agudilla. So once somebody says adu agudilla, then if you say it's possible, now it becomes an ego
Right.
issue, right? You are trying to prove that person wrong. You're not just trying to get the thing done. Now you're trying to prove that person wrong. So the big things start getting happening. So what happens during uncertainties? What happens during these? What do I do next? You have this dilemma kind of situation, and dilemma is where probably you have only one or two options. But suppose you have multiple. I've decided to walk away from this particular so-called fantastic opportunity. Why? Because I felt that XYZ reason. Now that reason doesn't hold water with anybody. You try to convince somebody, they'll say, "What nonsense! This is such a big opportunity, and using this silly reason to walk away from that." So then you begin to think, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" Right? So then you ask yourself, what was the primary motive of your doing something? I'll give you a simple example. Should I start an office in Bangalore or not? It's a very, very simple question, right? It keeps coming all the time. Should I set an office in Bangalore or not? Now, I say, if I set up an office in Bangalore, I will have to be traveling to Bangalore all the time. If I'm traveling to Bangalore all the time, I'm not reaching my objective of providing employment to my hometown people and being with my parents. So I have moved away from my original goal with this other goal, which seems to be a very easy to extrapolate. It seems that's the most natural thing to do, but it is taking me away from my original. So if all the time you look back to the reference point, why you did what you did, and not get misled by all the paraphernalia and all the frills that have built around it over time, go and look at the original. Answer is always there. The answer is very clear at that time. So uncertainty goes there, but it's
Right.
difficult because you're always, clouds become more. So you have to go and hit at the core every night.
Yeah. Very a lot of lessons to learn from talking to you. Once there's a student who asks, I think this could be the last question that we take today. The student asks, once Elon Musk said that colleges are not for learning, colleges are for having fun. He said you can learn from anywhere, but not from college. I don't know how exactly phrased this is, but is that true in your life?
So learn. What do you mean by learn? So what Elon Musk is probably referring to, that again, I have not met Elon Musk, and whatever he said is subject to the meanings
Context
and
also. Yes.
sentences and
Right.
grammar and all those complex things. So, but learn meaning that yes, I can learn anywhere, especially today. I can learn sitting in my bedroom at my convenience from the best teacher on that subject anywhere in the world. That is true today. That wasn't probably true earlier. I remember struggling so much just to get a book out of the reference section of the Indian of Science library, or waiting 2 years to get a paper. That is all gone now. Now it's an equal world. Anybody can learn anything anywhere. So what he probably means college is a place to have fun is, in addition to being able to learn, you can have a good time because there are others around you, peers, who can support that experience and make it such a wholesome, wonderful,
Right.
fun thing, which you can't do sitting in your bedroom, right? You can learn that stuff, but you can't get that thing. So in addition to being able to learn, you can also have fun. Now I can drop that word in addition, and I can say that I can have fun in the college. So, and it can mean completely something different, right?
Correct.
So, but I think what it means is, in addition to learning, you can also have fun. Somewhere else, you can only learn. You can't have fun.
Right.
So, and fun doesn't mean that you're not learning. You can have fun learning. That's what it means. Why can't learning be fun? Why is it that now learning is a mutually exclusive with fun? No, that's not. Again, here we are trying to bring in our own perspectives and twisting somebody great person saying, like, so we get that person's sayings and then we add our perspective and then we present it in a different way. No. So college is a place where you can have fun learning. I would put it that way. Somewhere else you can also learn, but you won't have as much fun.
Right. Thank you so much. I think if you could give us a few closing words to motivate our students on how to be the most productive in their life, be it now in their academics or later in their future. If you could just give a few words of motivation for them to be productive, I would be obliged.
So we are talking about students in the 10th, 11th, probably age
12, yeah, yeah.
group, right? So students, let me tell you one thing. I have children who have gone through that phase, and I've looked at your textbooks, your curriculum, your syllabus, and I compared it with what I myself studied in those days, maybe close to 40 years ago. I think the number of new things that you're learning are very few compared to what we learned. It's almost the same. The syllabus is almost the same. Curriculum is almost the same. Except that when we were studying in those days, it wasn't such a scary thing, right? It wasn't such a dominating thing of our life. We did so many things in addition to learning that whatever is to be taught in the school. There were so many hobbies, there were so many activities, there were so many co-curricular things. I'm not talking about extracurricular. Extracurricular, maybe there was another thing. We had science lab, we had so many math lab, hundreds of co-curricular things that went around because the core items that were to be examined on in which decided our future did not occupy that much of the time. Today, I find that all the students are dominating their waking times fully, just studying the same things that we studied probably for half that time. Why? So, why has that happened? Is it because you are not fully engaged in doing that, that is making you spread so much of time over that? Is it because you're not having enough sleep, which is causing you attention span deficiencies, which is making you take more time to learn the same amount of stuff? Whatever it is, you know the answer best. And just remind yourself that your parents studied the same amount of things in half the time that you are doing. So maybe there is a way you can have yourself become more productive by re-examining where you are spending your time. We didn't have as much entertainment as though the children are having today, because, for example, we didn't even have TV, right? Forget social media. We didn't even have TV. If we had to entertain ourselves for 2 hours or 3 hours for a movie, that was a big project, right? So you had to, it's a major event going to a movie theater. So now it is, entertainment is probably dominating your life. Again, I don't want to accuse you of anything. You know best what works best for you, but ask yourself, is it possible that there is predominant overemphasis that I'm giving to something which need not be so if I did it a little differently? Little differently, don't have to do much different. Maybe it's just sleep more for half an hour more, maybe. And that will probably make you much more efficient, much more productive, and much more, what can I say, enjoying yourself while studying.
Right. So, before we end, I would like to tell our viewers don't let fears, insecurity, or what others want hold you back from making life on your own terms. You can make life into whatever you want it to be. You have the power to create your own path and be different. It won't be easy, but hopefully, what we have learned today will help you along the way. Thank you very much, Dr. Narasimha Bhat, for being on this program and helping us and guiding our students. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Ankush. Wish you once again a very happy Deepavali, and may the year ahead bring lot of peace, happiness, and tranquility to everybody.
Thank you, sir. So, on
Goodbye.
the next episode, to remind our viewers, on the next episode, we have a guest who is truly an inspiring figure. He has saved countless lives and made the lives of countless others much, much better. Our guest for the fifth episode of EDUPATH will be renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty. Make sure that you join us at 5 p.m. on the 22nd of November, that is next Sunday, to get a glimpse into yet another journey of success. Until then, good night, have a happy and safe Deepavali. Thank you.